Hi, my name is Mary Daly. This is a recording of a presentation that I shared with the Ottawa chapter of the IIBA on September 15th. This is about optimizing the role of the BA in strategic thinking and design. There are two main content areas that I go through in this presentation. In the first chunk, I share the strategic context, the organizational context within which the BAs play, and then I share a couple of strategic thinking models and how the BA role can be optimized within that frame. In terms of my objectives for what I'd love to accomplish here, I want to liberate the word strategy and place it solidly and confidently in the BA's toolkit. This is not about sprinkling the word strategy into every sentence, but rather doing strategic thinking. I'd like to share a couple of the strategic thinking models that I have created that are the synthesis of the highest order principles of design thinking, lean and agile. And in some cases, you'll find that these models will give voice to the great work that you're already doing. And in another case, perhaps these are new models that will help you strengthen your strategic mindset. There's lots of room in the strategy space, and we're all on a journey to increase our skills no matter where we're starting from. My objective is to help cultivate or reinforce your energy and passion for doing substantial and meaningful work. As a BA, you're in a perfect role to help shape strategy. And in doing that, you're going to have a greater positive contribution to your teams and to your organization. When we ran this meeting live, we had a number of activities. In this re-recorded version, we won't have any live input, but I will be sharing the highlights of the questions and feedback that was shared during that meeting. We started off with some introductions in that meeting, and I think it's useful here to see who was part of the game. My question to the participants was, who are you and what do you do? We started out with a Zoom poll to get people to identify which sector they played in. Then I used a tool called Nureva Span Workspace to ask people to contribute stickies that reflected their role, whether they were an individual contributor, a manager, a consultant, reflect their years of experience, and give us a sense of who they were. The idea was super fast introduction that would provide us with a nice little heat map of the makeup of our webinar participants. Here's what the crew looked like. Now, your vision is not going. The stickies here are intentionally blurred out. What you can see is, in terms of the numbers, the number of people who were individual contributors, managers, and consultants. This green to blue scale reflected the relative seasoning of BAs. You can tell from this picture that the vast majority of the participants were very seasoned BAs. This is the result of our industry sector poll that revealed the number of participants who came from various sectors. Let's get started. This is a model that I have developed for describing organizational work and on organizational strategy and designing organizations. This is an organizational lens, I would say. We start at the top with classic strategic cascade, mission, vision to business model, which then drives strategy, goals, and objectives. Next question when we're getting to organizational design is, what does that mean for the work to be done? What are the management systems and strategic capabilities required? From there, that drives the resourcing strategy, and then the more conventional org design in terms of roles and structures. If you work in IT, your cascade probably does an expansion on one of your key management system, which is the IT system. In this case, I'm focusing on the workforce and organization. What I mean by organizational model is all of the required strategic capabilities, management systems required to implement that strategy. It's a beautiful thing when there's a clear purpose from which the organization is working, because that clear purpose provides downstream clarity, and the organization can then more quickly and more easily make aligned decisions. All of these downstream choices need to fit together, and they need to reinforce the strategy and one another. Now, real life in an organization is not just these hard elements, but in fact, there's a whole internal ecosystem, maybe an operating system that includes how we make decisions, how we divide and do the work, how we share power, how we share information, and how we learn and innovate. This is the operating system within which the BA role is playing. I'd like to move on to talk a little bit about strategy. When I mean liberating the word strategy, I'm bringing it to its essence. Strategy is about making choices, and those choices are made at all levels of the organization. Historically, and still in some organizations, strategy is the purview of the highest echelon of the organization. There is an assumption that that strategy then moves down to the remaining levels simply for execution. But in truth, we know that strategy is really a continuum, and the execution of that strategy, the ability to achieve those strategic objectives, depends on making strategic choices all the way through the organization. Here's a little more simplified view of this model, one that you probably use regularly, where we start with strategy, go to tactical, and then operational. A simplified tiering for an organization. Here is a Google slider that I'm using to reflect the opportunity to zoom up to strategy and zoom into details. I'm going to use this slider a bunch of times through this presentation. Choices are made at all levels of the organization. By choices, we mean those concrete and deliberate decisions that increase the probability of achieving our vision and goals. Business analysts play an essential role in bridging the gap between strategy development and the implementation of strategy. BAs are facilitators of strategic behavior, helping identify those choices on where and how to spend time, energy, and resources. This little graphic here I'm using to depict the role of the BA and the BA. This line on the outside, it's not a square, it's a frame that denotes the role of the BA. And here is you as a BA inside there. When I think about business analysts in the role of implementing strategy, you're bridging the gap. Business analysts occupy different positions on the continuum inside an organization, anywhere from business analysts to roles of BAs where analysis is the primary focus, maybe business is the focus, or perhaps at the highest levels, a business analyst is working on enterprise-wide stuff. Here is another view of the continuum within which BAs live, going from analyst roles up to business and working somewhere on the continuum of operational, functional, divisional, and enterprise in terms of location in the organization. As you go from operational up through enterprise roles, complexity increases, problem complexity increases. Business challenges carry higher risk and have greater and long-term impact. And there's another thread that runs along this path, and that is strategic thinking. And the power and importance of strategic thinking becomes even greater as complexity increases. BAs find themselves along this continuum and have an important role in strategy and design. When we talk about strategy, we're talking about getting to the heart of what needs to be solved and knowing what questions to be asked. I believe that the BA's superpower is in asking questions, and underneath it all, these simple questions probably figure prominently somewhere in your work. Are we working on real things, and are we working on the right things? For those of you who work in the design space or with design thinking, you may resonate with this divergent, convergent approach to problem solving. In this visual, you can see on the left-hand side the opening questions that start any venture or any problem-solving process. What are the needs and how will we know? The right-hand side questions, those drive towards the clarity that's needed for right action, where to focus, which direction to go. These two sets of arrows, they could represent the outside brackets of a project. Inside that project, that opening and closing of thinking is happening on an ongoing basis as you travel through from questions to ideas. Let's talk about the role of the BA. Many of you probably have heard about a T-shaped person, and I think that the BA role is an exemplar of a T-shaped person, whereby you have deep domain and technical expertise in business analysis, but you also have breadth and require breadth to be able to collaborate across disciplines with experts in areas all across the organization. I found this graphic of business analysis, and I thought that it was a really useful way of seeing the many elements that comprise business analysis. As I thought about the BA role, I thought that there was something in between these two. I created this image to perhaps better reflect my understanding of the BA role and the fact that BAs work across the continuum and require a versatile skill set and mindset to be effective. At this point in the meeting, during the live meeting, I asked a question and asked participants to contribute their thoughts. I wanted BAs to talk about being strategic, but I asked a question from the opposite perspective. In my client work, I often hear leaders say, my people are not strategic. You also see this lament in the business press. I know you're thinking they probably don't have enough BAs. So when asking BAs to think about why leaders might say, my people are not strategic, I ask them to reflect their comments. Here's what came forward. There were some common themes in these responses. Things like the focus, non-strategic people focus on the tactical too much. People are not strategic when they don't see the big picture, not thinking long-term. Some common themes emerged. These comments reflected what I hear from leaders. Why do leaders say my people are not strategic? They don't see the big picture. They're stuck in the details. They're wasting time on stuff that doesn't matter. And they're not adding value. During this conversation, when people bring forward their reaction to what happens when leaders think their people are not strategic, brings out all kinds of feelings about the boss, the culture, the systems, the resources, and the tools. And that absolutely may be valid and complicating the BA role. We're not going to solve for those things today. I want to focus on what's possible and the antidote to being seen as not strategic. In my icon for the BA, I have two elements, the role and the person. The frame is now colored by this beautiful strategic continuum. As a BA, your role denotes that you have a duty to be strategic. As a person in that role, you have a right to demonstrate that strategic thinking. This multi-dimensional role that you have as a BA requires you to be looking in multiple dimensions in order to add value. We know from neuroscience that when you look for something, you are more likely to see it. And so there's opportunities, perhaps even more, in your world, the more that you are looking for them. How do you look for them? You look up, you look ahead to the future, you look across to your colleagues and to other stakeholders, and you look outside to see what the external drivers are that you should be responding to. Maybe the most formative and the most impactful look is the look inside part. Here I am reflecting a BA who's fully expanding their role. When that BA is fully taking up their strategic role, you can see it almost looks like a spiritual experience. So now we know it's your duty to be strategic. You have a right to be strategic, but you also have a choice. And your choice is whether you fully expand on the possibilities that exist within your role. Now I'm going to share a couple of strategic thinking models that I hope will be useful as you continue to grow and expand your strategic thinking skills. Some of you might already work with some of these tools or crafts, agile, lean, and design thinking. At a craft level on our Zoom, each of these have different tools, different frameworks, different language, goals, pace. The more detailed we look at them, the more different they seem. But really, as we go upstream and we see what all of these techniques have in common, and we work at the principle level, we actually see a very common set of principles across these problem-solving techniques. They're all about deciding how to win, about dynamically finding and solving the right problem, engaging everybody in continuous improvement, and learning by doing. I'm going to share a couple of strategic thinking models and optimizing the BA role within those. There are three. I'm going to talk about situating, iterating, and calibrating. Here's the first one. You've now already seen this Google slider a couple of times, and situating is a central element of strategic thinking, both when you're listening and when you're telling. Having the ability to situate saves so much time and effort. Here in my first example, I've got a color spectrum. And here we can see the difference between a zoomed in version where someone has the opportunity, say in PowerPoint, to choose their color at a very precise level with a color recipe. Next level up at a pattern level, you've got an array of choices. And then at the simplest level, we've got a simple red, yellow, orange, green, blue, purple array. The next example I have leans on a Google Maps metaphor. When you type an address into Google, you go straight to the intersection place that you're looking for, maybe Main Street, but you can't really figure out how to get there until you zoom out and you see the bigger map. Maybe you've been in a meeting where a presenter starts off and they were absolutely on Main Street, and you have no idea which city they're in. They've got the details of their Main Street arrayed in full glory, but we're not sure, are they in Ottawa or are they in Toronto? Another example, here we've got an elegant image of an architectural dream at the vision end of the scale and a plumbing diagram at the other end of the scale. Of course, both are necessary at the right time. Each has its purpose in place, and situating them gives your listeners, your partners, the ability to move with you more quickly and more effectively. So as a BA, maybe when your discussions didn't land the way that you expected, or presentation didn't land, you might ask this reflective question: what was my role in this? And what did I do to help them understand where I was coming from? We've all been in this situation whereby we are absolutely zoomed in at the what level. We are firing on all cylinders. Frontal cortex is completely occupied with the problem. Maybe it involves an Excel spreadsheet. Well, what could go wrong? I asked the group, I said, when someone is deeply focused on the work at hand, what could go wrong? Based on the responses in the chat, it seemed like many could relate. What could go wrong? Could be working on the wrong thing, could be wasting resources, missing the big picture, missing opportunities. We all probably have a little suffering on any one of those. Let me go back to my earlier consulting days when I was learning the ropes, and here I am on a project with a total project time available, and I'm working away on the what, the hands-on work, spending much time on the what and probably some late breaking time on the so what. This may or may not have happened to me. Here I might be working away, deadline is ahead, and I can see it, but I only see it clearly a little late, both literally and figuratively. On a late night, I'm seeing the destination a little more clearly, and maybe a wise colleague is helpfully asking me, Mary, I get all that, but what are we actually recommending to our client? Perhaps this has happened to none of you, but I learned from all the times that it happened to me, or that I created those experiences. So let's look at a superior approach. Let's start with the so what right at the beginning, and let's start with the so what firmly in mind as we get going. Along the way, We keep checking in. We keep looking at what the destination is. Odds are the destination is changing. When it changes, when we're checking in, much easier to move our work directly to respond to that destination. So more efficient work, more productive, more satisfying, and happy experiences are possible. So BAs, I see you as the ultimate connectors. You help connect the dots between the what and the so what, and you help create the context within which you work and within which you can help your colleagues be more effective. So you absolutely have a role and a duty to ask questions. Those questions help create clarity. Those questions refine the why of what you're working on. In doing that, you create energy with your team on the project. You create and sustain the energy with people by helping to create clarity. Here are some examples of questions that you might ask. You would see the moments at which these would be most effective. Where does my piece fit into the bigger picture? How does this serve our aspirations? What's the change we wish to see in the world? What is wrong that needs changing? Which client need does this solve? I have said that you have a duty and a right to play an important strategic role, but that doesn't entitle you to march into meetings with your hands on your hips. When we're talking about important meetings and conversations, a critical element of your success is going to come from preparation. All will go better when you've done your research, done your thinking, and have a point of view. You can imagine when you do come in with a feisty approach, a natural response from your listener or leader might be, okay, thank you for sharing your concerns. What do you think we should do? When you have the opportunity to lay down your big strategic questions, you'll find a thinking partner if you start off with a learning mindset. Help me understand. You might say, help me understand how these projects fit together. Can you remind me what the logic was when we started on this project? Can you help me see what's going on this other project? I want to make sure we're both working towards the same goal. And things will go well when you've done your work, your research, and your thinking, and you come with conviction. Strong beliefs loosely held. And as Carl Week would say, fight as if you are right, listen as if you are wrong. That was the situate strategic thinking model. Let me move on to iterate. Stephen Covey captured this so beautifully. He talked about a strategic thinking mindset as starting at the beginning with the end in mind. And so here we are, we imagine a future and then come back to today so that we can design towards that future. When we start out at the beginning with the end in mind, the future is far. And as time goes on, we can see that future endpoint more clearly. The future is coming into view as we're progressing. Of course, that's true, but the future keeps changing as well. The future is moving. Strategy and strategic thinking requires a long-term vision, but it also requires a responsiveness to changing conditions. I asked the participants to talk a little bit more about their reactions to strategy. And let's say strategy, thinly, grayly described here, you can't see it clearly. When you can't see strategy clearly, what do you typically think? Here's a BA thinking, if I can't see it clearly, there's not really a strategy. There's lack of leadership, leaders aren't communicating properly, can't see the plan, it's a work in progress, must mean that strategy is going to change. And is all the work that we're doing going to be worth it? Because I can't see the dream closely enough. You can see from those comments that perhaps many BAs have been in this position of not having clear strategy being shared. So it's true, the future is far, and the farther away it is, the less clearly you can see it. It doesn't mean that we only can do short-term planning and we can only plan for what we can see. It means we have to take a more fluid approach. Strategy is fluid. There's no such thing as creating a strategy and then delivering it exactly as it was crafted in the first instance. It's fluid. We start out with a strategy, And when we bring it out into the world, we try it out, we learn, and reveal stuff that we couldn't possibly have known in the first instance. And only always the experience of delivering on a strategy actually improves it. As you progress on delivering on that strategy, you start to reveal its weaknesses and its strengths, and you see the weaknesses and strengths of the organization that is being asked to deliver on it. As we go through and actually test out our strategy, we're sharpening strategy as we go. And that only comes through real life. As BAs, you have an opportunity at all of these points along the way to ask questions, to share your work, share your tests. All of those serve to learn at a level that would not have been possible in the first instance. Strategy is an integrated set of continuous choices that are being made, assessed, and remade on an ongoing basis. So then as a BA, always better to work with it and not against it. Maybe this was true in the old days, but not even really. There was no such thing as sequential execution of a strategy. It should always be iterative. And here we are in a fast-paced world with our loops going very quickly. We're never going back to a slower world where we have time to redo. We have to adapt and adjust all the way along the way. Roger Martin, he is the former dean of the Rotman School of Business and author and speaker and professor in strategy. The question that he believes most elegantly focuses energy when there's challenges in defining strategy. He says, this is the most important question. What would have to be true in order for this to be the best choice? And he offers 3 dimensions to use this question on. What would have to be true for customers, for the competition, and for the company? I bet you if you try out this question, you will find it to be a very productive addition to your conversation. That was iterate. Let's move on to calibrate. At the beginning of an adventure, a mission, a venture, a problem, things are messy. Clarity is low, and maybe we're taking one step forward, one step back. You might recognize this kind of scribble from the strategizer people who do work in business model design. When clarity is low, the only way that we're going to create clarity is by getting out there, by learning, by doing, by gathering more information, gaining more experience, and sharpening as we go. And as you do that, as you create clarity, you gain confidence in the direction you're going, and you become more willing to invest your time, your talent, your energy, and your money into the venture. You are dynamically working and finding and solving the right problems, which you can't see at the beginning. They only emerge over time. As a BA, within this strategic thinking mindset, how do you optimize your role? Again, working with it, knowing that it's messy at the beginning, knowing that we can't see it all. Don't work against that reality. And you have a beautiful role to play in identifying experiments that will yield the next level of clarity. Go fast, learn, go again. I love this quote from Colleen Patrick Goudreau, who says, "Don't do nothing because you can't do everything. You have an opportunity to make progress, step in the breach, try little, start building over time." That was calibrating. That represents the end of my share on strategic thinking models. Let me do a quick share on the feedback activity that we did at the end of our meeting. I asked the question, what was valuable and meaningful for you today? People contributed their thoughts on green stickies. That's very useful to me in terms of me continuing to refine my models and how I talk about them. I also asked, do you have any advice for me? Any additional learning and opportunities for improvement? And those were shared as well. That brings me to the end. And here are ways in which you can get in touch with me through LinkedIn, my website, or a telephone call. I always look forward to conversations that talk about strategy, perhaps a distant coffee, perhaps a socially distanced meeting. I welcome the opportunity to talk about strategy and answer any questions you might have regarding the strategic thinking models that I have crafted. Until the next time.